Happy Thursday, folks. It's time for today's Think Happy Thoughts. Great to be with you this week. Hopefully everybody's adjusting to this new style of life, and hopefully I can give you something today that will put a smile on your face. It's going to put a smile on mine, at least, to think about it. So let's do that right now. I don't know if you remember the story growing up, and of course we had all these nursery rhymes that we would learn. And some of them, they started off as trying to teach kids different things, not to talk to strangers or not to do this or do that. But if you've ever remembered the story of Rip Van Winkle, and no, I'm not talking about the famous Rob Van Winkle, as my generation very affectionately calls him Vanilla Ice, not who I'm talking about, but the old tale of Rip Van Winkle. Now, Rip Van Winkle was a man who lived up in the New York Catskill Mountains, and he had a wife who he did not like very much. He was not fond of her. He was married to her. He loved her, but he didn't like spending time with her. So he and his dog Schneider, who loved the name, by the way, Dog Schneider would often take trips. He would grab his gun. They would head off into the mountains, deep away from everybody else, into the forest where they would hunt squirrels. And they talks, of course, in the nursery rhyme there about how he could never miss a shot, and this dog Schneider was very good at going to retrieve them. And he did this a lot to get rid of away from what he called his shrew of a wife. Now, ladies, I don't mean any disrespect there. Just what he calls it in the nursery rhyme to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. But Rip Van Winkle, one night while he's out doing this, he runs across a group of, some rhymes call it trolls, sometimes some rhymes call it gnomes. It varies, elves, fairies, different people, different things. But a group of these little celestial force creatures that were bowling in the middle of the woods. And he, being a man who liked games, and a man who had some pretty good aim and high-hand coordination, he got involved with this group, and he, after bowling with them, having a lot of fun, noticed that they had a barrel of a liquid drink substance. I don't know what it was. It was some kind of an alcohol, some kind of a potion, whatever it was. The little dwarves, they love that stuff. But Rip Van Winkle would love to try. And finally, he got the courage to ask them for some, and they gave him some, kind of giggling around him as they watched him drink it. And it made him very drunk, very tired. He laid his head down on a rock, and Rip Van Winkle went to sleep. He woke up the next morning, or so he thought. He reached over to grab, oh my gosh, I'm tired, I'm sore, I feel really bad. Man, that was a rough night. Did that really happen, or was that all just a dream? He reached over to grab his gun, and his gun, of course, crumbled in his hands. It had rusted and rotted, and he didn't have his gun, so he reached his other hand over to his trusty dog, Schneider, and of course, Schneider was just nothing but bones. He had laid there beside Rip Van Winkle and just wasted away, and he gathers himself, he goes back down to the town, he goes and looks for his wife, and they say she's passed away. He looks for his old friends, and he asks them such and such, and he says, what about Rip Van Winkle? Because he had a son, also named Rip, and said, there's young Rip. And Rip Van Winkle, of course, the senior, notices that he has gone to sleep for 20 years. 20 years have gone by, and Rip Van Winkle has been asleep. Now, here's where I want to kind of tie it together. Who'd have thought, this is the 92nd day of the year, I believe. Who'd have thought 90 days ago, we made our New Year's Eve proclamations, declarations, resolutions, whatever you want to call them. We were going to lose weight, we're going to eat better, we're going to read more, we're going to study, we're going to do this and that to better ourselves. Who would have thought that at the end of those 90 days after that, we would be in a completely different world than we were? No, we haven't been away for 20 years. But it is crazy how different we woke up on January 1st compared to what we're waking up to now. We are, they would have never thought that churches were closed and having to converse with their people electronically, and that the Zoom app and Facebook Live and Skype and everything would have taken over all means of conversation between friends and family. And husbands and wives, just having to eat dinner. And we talk about how things are bad, and things are not bad. They're rough. They're different, I think is more better word for it. But we think about how things are different, and we talk about, yes, this too will pass, and yes, this is a storm, and yes, this is a difficulty, and yes, of course, obviously, if you're affected directly by the illness part of this corona thing, we are, it's a sad time, and yes, this storm will pass. And I never want to lose thought of, making ourselves better in the future, of a better world, the hope that we have in returning to normalcy even, and hopefully sooner than later. But I would just hate to think that we have missed the opportunities that the current situation has kind of forced us into right now. Yesterday, I had an amazing day. Wasn't unlike a lot of days. The kids are off school, and I got to hang out with my son. And we hung out a little bit more even than we normally do. And we play games together. We play video games together. He destroys me at every video game, even ones he's never played before. And I've been playing for days and days. And that's nothing to brag about, I guess. I've never been real good at the video games. But I got to spend time with him in a way that got me thinking about how we've almost been forced into this situation. We spend a lot of time together. My son and I are very close. We spend a lot of time together. But it was neat yesterday to understand how what's happening around us has forced us and squeezed us into this situation to where we are doing things and spending time together and presenting us with opportunity. I know I sound like a marriage counselor. Every time you have a fight, it's an opportunity to learn more about the other person. But it's forces and opportunities that we have to be with one another and to do things that we would have not slowed down enough to do. Maybe you are getting more time to read. Maybe you're sitting down with your spouse more because you're not going out to eat or not eating and passing while you're going back and forth to work. I hate to think that we had forgotten and missed this opportunity in the now because we're thinking so much about what's going to happen in the future. Now, the Bible says in Ephesians 5, 15 and 16, it says, see, these are live, and there's no redoing them because I don't do more than takes. Ephesians 5, 15 and 16 says this: be very careful then how you live, making the most of every opportunity. Here's your happy thought. Instead of just focusing on the hope of when this is over, give a little bit extra thought in the opportunity you have today that you wouldn't have had 90 days ago. Whether you're forced to be at home or forced to be with a loved one or forced to do whatever you're forced to do, but you're in a place that you would not have pictured yourself 90 days ago. Thank God that we have this opportunity to do something a little bit different. Don't spend so much time thinking about the hope of when this is all over that we miss the great things that could happen today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this gives you a happy thought. It's definitely putting a smile on my face. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.